Well, welcome everyone to another edition of the Spark Coaching Live Session. Would you believe 2 weeks has already passed us, Kylie and Bram? I don't believe it. Where are those 2 weeks gone?
No. It'll be Christmas around the corner, isn't it?
I know. We
I said it live.
But anyway, another edition. Welcome, Kylie. Welcome, Bram, our resident coaches. Thank you very much for joining us today. And a special guest today, Keith Brooks, Bram's guest. Thank you so much, Bram, for introducing Keith to us backstage. A wonderful career and absolute pleasure to have someone of Keith's caliber on the call today. Bram, just a quick little intro to our guest and let's get on with it. Over to you, Bram.
So a little elevator pitch for Keith. Obviously, a man with a lot of experience in the both executive C-suite level and even sales as well, just prior to that. Now, these days, more an executive coach to businesses of, let's say, medium to large organizations, mainly. Has run multi-billion-dollar businesses and has not just lived in Australia, but also overseas in Asia as well as Europe, and also working closely with the American subsidiaries and the like. So without further ado, Keith, it's a pleasure of having you here. These days, you work mainly as a tech chair, that is the Executive Connection Chair. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brad.
Keith, I might kick off with a couple of questions. An amazing career. Congratulations. How did it start? To lead and manage and grow organizations as described by Bram, with, I guess, the numbers in behind those in terms of quantum is quite large. Where was the beginning for you, and was this the intended plan?
Great question. I'll give you the edited version, if I may. So, born in the UK, decided to emigrate in the early 70s to Australia, and fortunate to land in Perth, WA in 1973. And I did think I had a job waiting for me, which turned out not to be the case. So I then looked for work, and I wanted to work particularly for the company that I finally was able to join after, I think, 6 interviews, and an exhaustive process. But finally I worked for them. And the thing I loved about that was I joined the organization as a sales representative, or a medical detailer, as they called in those days. And my job was to explain to doctors the benefits of using the products that our company had researched, manufactured, and marketed. Mm. And the great thing about this company that I spent the next 28 years working for was that they believed in developing their people. Mm. And their attitude was, if you want to work hard, we will give you all of the opportunities to grow and develop as a person. And so for the next 28 years, they took me around different states of Australia to a national role. And then they put me onto an international candidate program, which meant I was going to post universities in Europe and the US and in other countries. And they were constantly encouraging me to learn, to grow and develop my capabilities. So I had my whole career with them. And as Bram said, they took me into Asia, usually in third world countries like Indonesia in the 80s, wasn't that flash. Then I went to Africa for a time, then I went to Europe, then to Eastern Europe, then back to Europe. And my last role was as president in Hong Kong for Southeast Asia. And then I retired 26 years ago and came to live in Adelaide, where I found the Executive Connection, or they found me, or one or the other. We found each other.
So you, well, congratulate. I mean, in terms of the programs that you had invested or were invested in you, I mean, you provided 28 years of loyal service.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. They got a decent return on their investment.
Exactly right.
But I have to say, when you turn up to work every day and you work in an organization that believes, and I ask all of the CEOs that I work with to recall the person that's had the most influence on their career. And I can point to the person that did that for me and gave me the confidence that I was learning and growing. And this person took me out of Africa and said, I want you to help me open up Eastern Europe when the wall came down. So I spent a lot of my time in the then Eastern European countries, which had not been commercially developed. And it was a hell of a journey and a great place to learn a lot. I then was able to go through 3 global mergers, and I sat on the merger team for Africa and Europe. And that was just an incredible, interesting experience. And I suppose the biggest highlight of my life was when my boss had got me to prepare all the plans for the 122 countries we were nominally looking after. And then I said, you know what, I'd like to get some more money in. So rather than being a staff, I'd like to have some bottom line responsibilities. So he gave me 15 countries to look after, and they were all the countries where there was a US embargo or a war, or we weren't supposed to be talking to them. When the Balkan War were on, Iraq, Iran, Bosnia, Herzegovina, all of these lovely places. So that was a fantastic learning experience because, as Bram knows, because we've talked about this, achieving outcomes not through your own people but through third parties and learning what makes them successful is an eye-opening experience.
So the logic transcends generations, surely. And do you see it any different today in terms of the investment in people and I guess tenure and expectations? Has that changed in your minds? And what do you see with the many executives that you obviously coach and the business that they lead? Surely the method is the same, isn't it?
Well, yes, I think your opening comments also are valid, though, that the world is not the same as it was in the 1970s. And what was considered that you joined a good organization and you gave them your career if they were giving back to you, that is probably not the way the world operates today, although there are some exceptions. I'm fortunate I work with about 50 leaders here in South Australia, some of them running international, some of them running national, some of them working and running regional offices. And they do have their fair share of dedicated, loyal, long-term employees. But they also understand that there's a war for talent and they have to position themselves in a way that is going to attract the best talent. But once they've got them, they have to develop the people's careers. I think the number one responsibility for a good leader is to develop the careers of the people working with them. And investing in them and growing their capability. So my breakfast meeting this morning was all about that. What have you promised this guy is going to be your CEO in 12 months' time? You can't just promise him. You've got to show where he's at, where he needs to be at, the gaps between his current capability and experience, and the program you're going to develop over the next 12 months to make him fit for job. And I think that's what great employees do. Great employers do for great employees.
Yeah, I always see, and I do a lot of leadership development and a lot of executive and leadership coaching, Keith. And I'm always talking about leadership being an investment, not a cost, right? What we do know is that, without great leadership, okay, even the best talent can't win, right? So one of the things that Gallup released about, I think it was maybe 8 months ago now, was that, and you touched on this, even Brian, Arthur, you were talking about it, is that loyalty is no longer is loyalty what we get from our staff anymore if we don't develop them and grow them and train them and mentor them and coach them. Okay, then no longer loyalty is not what we can rely on anymore. It really is, what can you give me? How can you add value? And we've got to shift that thinking. Not only organizations, but executives need to shift that thinking to realize that leadership is an investment, not a cost.
I would agree 100%. I'd add to it, though, that the other, what I have learned, certainly in the last 25 years of doing what I do now, as opposed to being an executive for a corporation, is that the people who in the workforce today are not so much motivated by the job that they've got. They want to know that the organization that they're working for has values, has a plan, has a mission, and they're going to do good in the world.
Yes. Yes.
So if the leader of a business can't articulate why they exist and what their purpose is and how they will manage their business through their value chain, including developing their people, then
Yes.
they won't be attractive to a lot of good talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
The challenge is also, there's businesses with HR departments, there's businesses without, there's businesses that wish they had them, but they're just not at a stage of size or scale to afford. And so it's left with, usually the entrepreneur who's got to attract and grow, maintain and compel their employees to strive for more and deliver more and offer their discretionary time because they believe in what the company is trying to achieve. So the entrepreneur is also trying to grow the business at the same time to give it that space for people to evolve and grow into. What would you say to the listeners on the call today in that space right now? They're saying, I know where I want to go, but usually these large organizations have a HR person that oversees the development of, obviously the board and or the owner would kind of put the program together, fund the program, but then the HR would then, administer and maintain and maintain the program, but that may not have that person. So when does that shift occur? Is it usually what's the key indicator? Is it a ratio of times earnings? Is it a ratio of profit? Is it, I guess, the appetite to is it case on case? Because every leader would say, I don't need to generate a certain level of profit to start investing in my people. Like, what do you see as that point of shift to actually have someone internal?
It's an interesting question, and I think it's multifactorial. So the first thing I think is that entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. They're not great leaders of people.
I'm leaving now.
Sorry?
I'm going to leave the stage now. I'm only joking. I'm only being funny. Go ahead.
I'm not saying black and white, but if you're a great entrepreneur, you may not be a great leader of organizations. Secondly, I have a very firm view that HR has a role. It has a compliance role, that it has very important things to do. I work with businesses with thousands of employees. You can't operate that scale without having an HR function. But what I really do not agree to is leaders abrogating their responsibility to HR. As far as I'm concerned, if you're a leader, you have a responsibility to the people that report to you, and you should be investing in them with your time and helping them grow and develop. And they're your future leaders in your business or somebody else's business if you're not fit for where they're going. But even if you lose them, if you give them a great journey and they learn and develop with you, they'll be an advocate for you in your business and they will be a future customer. So I have no problems with people who say, we're training people for other markets. Well, that's fine. You've done your job. But I really think that you can't abrogate your responsibilities to HR. HR, to me, could be a policeman. But basically, if you've got an organization development expert in your business, then to my mind, everyone should be doing regular one-to-ones and not with them, the person as an employee. I firmly believe that if you treat your people like employees, you won't get the trust and engagement that you could if you treat them like a person. So I don't want to work with you as an employee. I want to work with you as a fellow person. I understand your drivers. I understand your situation. I understand what goes on outside of work in your life and affects you when you turn up for work every day. What's happening with your family, your kids, your parents? If you've got aged parents who are going through a stage of life which is very challenging, have you got young kids developing? All of these things have pressure on a person. And what a good leader is doing is saying to this person, I understand, but I care about you outside of work, not in work, and I will help you any way I can to be successful given these pressures in your life at certain times.
Can I actually add to that, guys? I want to echo that, and I have first-hand experience about that, Keith. Because you know that recently you got me into a group to present to some key leaders, and I honestly, hand on heart, I bombed that day. the way you handle it afterwards is exactly showing you what you did. You had full understanding of the situation that it occurred in, and you still had my back. And that was beautiful. I love that about you. Thank you.
Okay, I can't stress enough that a lot of leaders treat their employees as employees instead of as people. You know, Maya Angelou has a beautiful quote, which is,
I love
people
it.
will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel.
Yeah, yeah.
And as a leader, what more could you want?
You know, I think also the thing that I always think about, it's the people that get the results, right? We can have, and I go into companies and I look at these amazing strategies and objectives and vision and mission and all of that, and I go, how are you tracking towards that? And they go, well, we're not quite where we need to be,
Yep.
right? So yes, that's definitely probably some areas around leadership, around execution and initiatives and things like that. But really, they don't have the people on the bus with them. They don't have them engaged. They're not happy. They feel like a number. They don't feel valued. They're not doing one-on-ones. They're not doing coaching. They're not providing opportunities to train and be developed and succession plan. But they expect them to come in and still achieve.
I would call that management by apathy.
Yeah.
That's
I
nice.
saw a great quote the other day, which I love, from John Bertram, famous for winning the America's Cup and also for changing the culture of swimming Australia. And I may not have this word perfect, but basically he said, it's amazing how many great things get done when you give other people the credit.
Yes.
It's not about me. It's not about me as the leader. It's about my team and what they're doing. And I'm supporting them and recognizing them.
Yes. I was working with a group of surgeons over the last 2 days, so Friday last week and Monday of this week, and we were creating their mission, their vision, their purpose, their 3 objectives, and then their strategies and their goal strategies and initiatives to fall through to make sure that they could actually achieve it. And you know, the look in their eyes when they actually read out their mission, read out their purpose, read out their vision, was just like, oh my God, I cannot wait to get out and share that with our people, right? Because it was so compelling. It was something that they were so proud of, and they knew that their people were going to just resonate with that. And because of that, was actually going to make a difference to the patients. I always remember that saying from John Maxwell, you know, where he says, you know, someone's talking to him. I think it might have been, I don't know, a leader that talks to him and says, you know, what happens if we invest in our people and they leave? And John Maxwell turns around and says, what happens if we don't invest in them and they stay, right?
Yes. We've probably all seen examples of that.
I see it day in, day out, right?
Absolutely. So I don't think you can over-invest in your people. And I worked with a young man here in Adelaide who went on to become the CEO of a very successful South Australian business, which became a global leader, which was recent. And I met yesterday with the part owner of that business. So they sold the business about a year well, maybe 2.5 years ago. So you may have heard of the name of the business. It's called Rising Sun Pictures. At one stage, they had 400 artists doing special effects for Hollywood movies. Wonderful culture, wonderful people. And I remember the CEO at the time, his name is Didier. He's an Adelaide boy. And he now runs his own business called Culture Amp, which has been described as the unicorn of Australia. So it's got a valuation over $1 billion US.
Jeez.
He stood up into the group meeting where he was a member of my CEOs and said that the worst thing you can do is prepare your people for their next role somewhere else. He's saying exactly what you're, the quote from Maxwell. You have to prepare people for their future roles, and they may not be with you.
Yeah.
But this is my point earlier before. It would not happen without the growth above. So my question really is how do you get that right? Because if you're not growing, you may not have the affordability to invest, but more importantly, people are going to hit a ceiling. And so
But I would,
it's really, what chicken and egg, what comes first? Like,
I would
gotta-
argue
you gotta-
to answer that question,
Mm.
if I could answer that question very succinctly and say that we're not talking about cost here. It doesn't cost, in financial terms, it doesn't cost the CEO to spend a period of time every week with their key people. It should be a pleasure, not
I
a
call that
cost.
hygiene factors, Keith. Like for me, that's hygiene factors. That is, if you're not meeting the people regularly, if you're not having those conversations, then you're not running a real business in my eyes. And I'm talking
Correct.
about more about investing in people, finding the capacity to do so, the time to do so, but also the room. I mean, you can invest, but they're going to want to, they're going to want to climb. They're going to want to take on more responsibilities. I mean, that usually comes with growth. What have you seen? Like, I mean, what are some of the challenges of that? It's a healthy tension, but if I can describe it as a tension, and without that growth, are you really being able to provide your people with those opportunities that they desire?
Well, let me just describe it. I'm not sure I can fully answer your question, but I'll try to. If I take my own career, every role that I had, I always had my boss's job description.
Mm.
And what I would do is look at my current level of knowledge, skills, and ability, and I'd look at my bosses and say, what's the gap between what I'm capable of and what I'd need to be able to do if I was in his shoes? And there was a gap. So what do I need to do over a period of time to close that gap? To get mentoring, to go and do specific courses, to get the benefit of my boss spending time with me explaining how to do something, or going to the accountant and learning how to do a discounted cash flow. I mean, if you're building your own career, you know where your weaknesses are and you know how to stop those gaps. And that doesn't come at a cost. It's just a focus of the individual to invest in themselves. And the organization just has to create the framework where it's encouraging people to do that and giving of their time. Now, they may go off and do an MBA. They might go and do another program. That does come at a cost, maybe. But really, it's the appetite of the individual to say, I want to grow and develop, and I'm prepared to commit to it, and the organization is there to support me. And you create the expectation. As I said to somebody the other day, and you may or may not have had this conversation, I said to this person who runs an international business, got about 300 staff, based in Adelaide, but global business. I said, if you look at each one of your individual staff, can you tell me what that person has learned in the last 12 months? Well, the answer was no, I can't. I said, well, why can't you? Why don't you have a learning register for every one of your employees? Just by doing the job, the same job that they're doing now, that they did 12 months ago, they would have had to have learned things. They're using new technology. You've got new process and systems. You've maybe given them a bit more autonomy in their role to do certain tasks. They would have learned and grown. But what you say is that's their title. It hasn't changed. They're the same person doing the same job. No, they've grown. They've developed. And you just have to keep a register of that and keep encouraging them and recording what their growth and development is.
Yeah, I like that because people are always asking for more, but they don't realize what they may already be getting. And to have that explicitly captured in a review meeting to say, okay, so what did you learn this quarter? I learned to do this and I learned to do that. And that's on the job. But they're filling that void that you describe. I really like that idea because I think sometimes you probably just don't realize as you're absorbing this opportunity to learn and grow, asking them to capture a register and actually checking that register on a regular basis just reinforces the opportunities the employer is providing. I think it's a great idea.
Builds more goodwill and more loyalty to actually want to stay.
Yeah. We use it as a learning matrix. But you know what I think, and I think I'd love to hear what you have to say on this, Keith. I think learning, to me, I just want to be a lifelong learner, right? As far as I'm concerned, if I'm not learning, none of my clients are learning, my team are not learning. So I really do think that it starts at the top as well, is that making sure that you as the leader are growing and learning new skills and getting new, whether it be qualifications or programs or workshops or whatever it might be. you know, when you're working with executives or senior leaders, most of the time when they come to me, it's because they've challenged. They're having some challenges, they're having some issues, and that's their trigger. But for me, it just should be what they should be doing. Having a coach, having a mentor, having that. What are some of the triggers that you see where leaders are proactive, that they're not coming to you because their business KPIs aren't met, their people are struggling, or their strategy's not right, or whatever it might be?
Yeah. So the majority of my work that I do is with the organization called the Executive Connection, which is just rebranded to Vistage. So Vistage is a organization regarded as the largest CEO membership organization in the world, approaching 50,000 members globally. And I suppose we have a different cohort. So the people I work with are successful CEOs running successful businesses, but they realize they need to keep growing and they need to keep making better decisions for themselves and for their businesses. So I'm working with successful people. I'm also working with no dickheads. I have a no dickhead policy in the groups that I chair. And we don't have a lot of egos running around the room. In fact, I handpick and it's interesting that the particular group I run, one of the 3 groups I run here in Adelaide, I also have 8 female leader CEOs.
Yeah,
Out
beautiful.
of a membership of 20, which is probably higher than the Australian average of female leaders. But anyway, what we basically do is to say, you know, not everyone is perfect at everything. Just I know there's some people that say, you know, work on your weaknesses. I think you need to work on maximizing your strengths and keep pulling that trump card out because you're good at that. Let's leverage that through the whole business, and then invest in your people and help them stand up. And I love the Daniel Pike quote about the other way of developing people is also about giving them something they can understand and measure. As I said to somebody, my last role as a CEO, there was a global merger of 3 companies and I was the titular head putting 3 companies together in Hong Kong. And you put that team together with the best intent. And then as you work with them for a period of time, I can look at one person and know if we have a discussion about something that needs to be done, I do not have to second guess that will be done. I have complete trust in that person's ability to deliver. Somebody else might think, well, they'll probably get it right, but I might need to check. Somebody else, I'm probably going, let's go through what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and let's have regular check-ins about make it happen. Now, if you're a leader and you've got your leadership team around you, you would want to have the guy that you don't have to second guess. And if you're a member of that team, you want to be the person that you're not being second guessed by your boss. It's very simple stuff, but that's how the world operates. The trouble is, if you've only got one person that you don't have to second guess where all the work goes.
Yeah, that's right.
You push it all to one person who delivers.
Yeah.
I've got one important question for you, Keith.
Sorry?
If I just can ask one important question. Whose responsibility is it mainly? Should the employee invest in themselves or should the business invest in the employee or both?
My view is if you've got the right employee, they're not coasting. They want to grow and develop and they have ambitions to be the best version of themselves. So they're motivated. But they need to be in an environment supported by leadership that says, we're with you, we want to invest in you, we'll help you become who you want to be. I love the Dan Pike's, not Dan, I got the first name wrong. Pike.
David. Is it David Pike?
No, there's a US guy who wrote Outliers, I think. I know that was Matthew Gladwell. Maybe I'm quoting Gladwell, but I love the concept of what I call AMP. As you get that person in your team who you trust, who you're growing, who you know is capable of taking on more and more, how do you reward them? You don't reward them by giving them more work, which is what we tend to do. That person can deliver for us. His attitude is that I call it AMP because it helps me remind it. So firstly, they've got to have a purpose. They need to know why they're doing it, why the business is doing it. you have to help them build their mastery to becoming the best they can be, which basically people would say takes 10,000 hours. But you can help them on that journey of being a master at what they do. But I think the thing that most of us need to think about when we lead other people is give them give them the autonomy. Don't treat them all the same. If I know that you make good decisions and you get it right, I'm going to give you more responsibility, not more work, but more autonomy to make decisions. I trust your decision-making process. So although you've got 4 people in the same role, this person I give more autonomy to.
Yes.
They've earned it. They've got my trust. I don't see that happening a lot. I think people tend to be treated the same.
I echo that. Absolutely.
Time to wrap up. Closing comments, Kylie, Bram. That's been excellent, Keith. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think probably the thing that really resonates as I hear us have this conversation is, and again, I'll quote some Gallup results from the recent 2023 Gallup survey, is that $50 billion in Australia is lost every year in organisations due to poor leadership, right? In the USA, it's $630 billion. If you wanted to equate that to one person, one poor leader in an organisation, that's $126,000 per annum. So if you invested 10,000, if you invested 5,000, you're going to get your money back. Your return on investment is good if that one poor leader is going to cost me 126,000. So for everyone that's listening, leadership is an investment. It's not a cost. Not just something that you should be worried about. How much is this going to cost me? But how much is this actually going to help me? So that's what I'd say.
In one sentence.
I know. I can't help it.
One person that a good leader versus a bad leader on the same seat in your business, that the one helps your business a lot more than the other.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, Keith, you're right, that it's an investment, it's not a cost. So I really appreciate what you brought to the table today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah,
It's been very nice.
Sorry, Keith, go on. Yeah.
I said it's been a pleasure to be able to pontificate a little bit about this stuff. I'm so lucky. My role, I have people talk to me and tell me stuff they wouldn't tell their doctor, their wife, their husband, their priest, their psychiatrist, their lover. I mean, I have a privileged position where I spend time with the CEOs that I work with for 2 hours every month. And I can't tell you how valuable and how privileged I am to be in that role.
Yeah.
Because every leader, it's lonely at the top.
Yeah.
They've got stuff they're not going to tell their chairperson if they've got one. They're not going to tell their executive if they have an executive team, and they carry a lot of weight and responsibility. So having a trusted person that they can share, not necessarily looking for solutions, but just
sounding board.
A person that's prepared to listen, challenge, reflect. That's what I do. That's my job. So whether I'm working with a 28-year-old or in one case a 68-year-old, people are still wanting to learn and grow and have a third party, like maybe some of us, who can be there supporting them and challenging them where appropriate and giving them another perspective on life and on their business.
Yeah,
that's great.
Totally.
Thank you so much for the closing comments. Look, my takeaways, don't outsource or pass on the responsibility of owning the development plans. I mean, obviously use HR as a function, but take control and ownership of that. And we're in such fast-paced environment these days where there's always on-the-job learning. Get your people to capture a learning register and debrief regularly on what the learnings are, because it makes it a tangible exchange once they've done that, and it adds to the enterprise value proposition that you're providing as well. So thank you for that. I'm going to talk to my HR person about that later on, and weave it into the quarterly templates, review templates. So I like it. Fantastic, Keith. Thank you so much. Hang about for a bit of a debrief, but we'll wrap it up there. Everyone, we'll see you next fortnight. Kylie, your topic next. Looking forward to your special guest. We'll see you then. Hang about, Keith. Thank you so much.
Thanks.